he like took over my account. I had to go into the bathroom or something. He was sitting next to me, and then he bluffed for 50 cents. I'm like, why are you bluffing for so much? And
for so much.
And for like 56 cents or something. It was a ridiculously small amount. And later on, when I was like playing high stakes, he kept just bringing it up. Do you like remember that moment where I couldn't bluff 56 cents, and now you're putting in 40,000 and you're telling me, oh, it's all good, you know?
I'ma give it all I got, like grinding every day, ain't no other way.
Welcome to Embrace the Grind, the show where we talk about business, finance, entrepreneurship through the eyes of professional gamblers. I'm with my co-host, Andrew Moreno.
What's up, fam?
Today, we are here with none other than Max Altergott, a former staple on the high stakes scene, played in the biggest tournaments, the biggest cash games, rubbed elbows with the best players all over the world. I'm sure he's gonna have some crazy stories. Lately, he's transitioned more into a family man, businessman. We're gonna get into all of that. How you feel, Max? How do you feel being on the third episode?
Great. It's fantastic to be here. I really appreciate it. It's nice to sort of be in a position after like some time in your life where you feel like it's, you know, you have something valuable to share, you know, for people to listen to.
Well, I think that considering my audience is a pretty large poker audience, you're gonna have a lot of valuable things to share, considering you were at one time considered one of the best poker players in the world, one of the best no limit hold'em players in the world. It's interesting because we're not really friends from poker. We're friends from life, and we became friends after you had kind of done all these huge things in poker. And so it's not something that we've ever really talked about. So I'm actually really excited to dive into this. And I was doing some research, and I noticed that the first ever entry on your Hendon Mob was a first place finish in a $100,000 tournament. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. Well, it kind of happens to be when you're already quite good at poker and just decide to play for the highest stakes.
So, but you had been a staple in the online world for a while?
I've been already, yeah. I played at the time regularly 5100 six-max games, 5100 heads up, 100, 200, 200, 400 when those games ran. So that was my bread and butter, I think. I think even at the time, anything below like 2550 felt low to me. Like I was almost bored playing 2550, and 1020, I didn't even want to touch it. I kind of felt I had to when I got like a recreational player or something, and I sit at the heads up tables because, you know, the hourly rates are great when someone comes to 1020 and dumps it off. But it was just almost unbearable to do it, you know, at the time, which in retrospect is crazy because right now I think playing 2550 is a great hourly rate, you know, and a high stake game. In today's environment, I mean, there's basically almost nothing running higher than that, right? But at the time back then, 100, 200 was regularly running 50, 100 every single day. I mean, there was not a day I would miss out on that action.
Did you have a poker crew that you came up with in Germany, or do you feel like you were kind of a lone wolf when it came to running in those games that you were running in?
Interesting enough, I wish I would have had a good crew. I had a few people. It was back at the time, like very, very early on, it was Frederick Keitel, Fischer in 1984. He was very big on stars. But he kind of like went out of the high stakes scene when I started entering it. And then who I probably like hung out with the most was Jungle Man.
When did you meet Jungle Man?
I met Jungle Man probably first time in 2011, something like that, or 10. It was too funny. Like, I mean, the stories around Jungle Man, you know, because he was so different back then. He has this Asperger's syndrome, right? Or like he's on the spectrum, and he's doing so well right now. But at the time when you meet him, I mean, he was an alien, you know. He was not part of this world. He didn't have an understanding how to introduce himself, you know, and I didn't have an understanding of how to handle that situation too. You know, it's not just a one-way problem. It's really, you know, if one person doesn't know and the other person doesn't know how to respond, it's on both ends. And so, and I met him and we started like hanging out at Johannes Strassmann's house, you know, who passed away in 2014, 15, I want to say, I think 14. And so we used to hang out in Vienna quite a bit, and I would like come there to visit. Jungle would come there, and he would like stay there for months at a time. And so yeah, he was a big influence on me for sure. Like in Heads Up No Limit.
Was he? Where was he at in his career versus where were you at in your career when you guys met?
So when we met, it was right around when Full Tilt got shut down on Black Friday. So he was not happy because I think he had like $5 million stuck on his Full Tilt account, which was all of his money, you know. So he was staked, and he started playing 10, 20 games, 5, 10, 50, whatever stakes you can find, and he was like playing stakes, he was like playing them, and it was the same games I was playing against the same people. So it was fascinating to watch how he plays against that person. So when I come on, I can take some of the tricks, you know, and use them too, things he picked up on. So it was very helpful.
I've always kind of thought that people that play high stakes are just built differently. I mean, I play like what I think would be considered mid stakes mostly, and the stress levels that can come in, you know, the dollar amounts for me, it makes sense for me to play those stakes. I'm just curious for someone who's played in, you know, a lot of these really big games as you have, and, you know, buying into 100Ks and playing for those big amounts of money. Do you think people are just built differently? Do you think, you know, on some level, like you and I are fundamentally different as far as being able to handle those stressful things, or do you think that's something that could be cultivated?
I do think that genetics plays a role. Like some people are just born specific ways. You know, I always look at, I find it extremely interesting to sometimes meet what I immediately recognize as sociopaths on a poker table. You know, they have no feelings for other people. You know, just the way, when you lie, right, your body sort of like speaks that language. You know, it changes. Like you control every movement, and it becomes very unnatural. When you're like speaking truthfully, everything flows. And so sociopaths don't have that at all. They're essentially like lying the entire time and flowing with that, right? And you can see that in some people, and you know, that we know. And so some people are just born with it. You know, they have no problems. You know, like bluffing. Their body doesn't react the same way we do. Like, you know, mine does. Like I get nervous, my heart beats. You know, I feel the adrenaline. I think, oh damn, maybe someone sees it. You know, there's like some fear behind it and so on, and that kind of infuses even a more significant reaction within the body, right? And some people just don't have it. You know, like I know Igor, you know, my friend, he doesn't feel his heartbeat when he's bluffing, you know, for all his money.
Wow, that's such a valuable thing.
There's like some things, right? But you can certainly cultivate a large degree. I think for me, what always made the biggest difference in terms of my nervousness or my abilities to do the best on a poker table was certainly preparation. Certainly. Even in games, believe it or not, I think if you play in very weak games, not being prepared is a huge mistake, because in very weak games, you can actually gain the most out of preparation. Because it's not like just a mental thing that you gain. You actually pick up on one read that's incredible. You're like not losing 100 big blinds in a specific spot where you would have lost 100 big blinds if you don't prepare for it. You know, so I feel like win rates can be drastically pushed in weak games if you prepare, and slightly pushed in like stronger games if you prepare. Yeah.
There was a period of time where you were playing cash games, you were rubbing elbows. I mean, when I was doing my research, I saw some things on YouTube. You were sitting next to Phil Ivey, Tom Dwan, Fedor Holtz, like the toughest players in the world. Do you feel like there has to be some level of everyone thinks that they're winning in that game? And
yes, otherwise they wouldn't play it, right?
That's insane to me, that everyone who's considered one of the best in the world is still willing to sit in those games.
Yes, I mean, for the most part, to be honest, those games usually have someone weak in it. You know, and everyone thinks that they're winning off the weak player, but I'm not sure that's very true. You know, because when you have a lineup of 9 players, and let's say you have only one weak player, truthfully, probably like number 8 and 7 don't make any money. They're probably losing. 6, 5 might be, you know, someone break even, and the top 4 actually win. Unless that one player is extremely weak, it's possible that almost everyone else on the table wins. You know, but if you don't have position on him, it again kind of goes down by a lot. You know, and with rake.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing that I was thinking about. I feel like when people, some of the GOATs, you know, the Phil Iveys, the Tom Dwans, these guys, I feel like, and even my friends that play like mid to high stakes, that are kind of like legends around California, they have this gamble inside of them that, like, I see it off the poker table all the time. You know, if it's like, you know, a lot of the things like at dinners, or they're gambling on the fight, or they make a game where they can just gamble on something random. And I think having that, I've noticed that there's like this degeneracy in a lot of the GOATs. Do you feel that you have kind of that, like, that degeneracy, or are you more on the, like, the chill end on that?
Yeah, I'm certainly not a gambler, you know, per se. I mean, I do take risks, but they feel calculated. I mean, I don't calculate it precisely, but what I do is I say, all of my knowledge that I've acquired, I'm pretty certain that this is a winning game for me, then I play. You know, and then depending on how much I think I'm actually winning, I'm also like able to risk more of my net worth, you know, or less, and so on. So it's very much based on that. But I've never played roulette, you know. I mean, I played roulette for $50 or something, but I don't think I've ever placed like a higher bet than maybe 500 on a blackjack table, you know. If you compare it to like poker, I stick it in with 52% for like multiple tens of thousands, you know, and feel okay about this. So I guess there's a part of me that just does not enjoy knowing that I'm the dog, you know, in a game.
So what I'm hearing you say is that your background and your introduction into poker wasn't really from a gambling aspect. You were introduced from an aspect where you were like a logic aspect, where you're like, I think that there's some things that I can do to make some money in this game. Do you remember how you got introduced to poker and how long it took you to go from nothing to, you know, playing 200, 400 online?
Yeah, so I got introduced into poker by my friends, and it was really a social thing to do. Everyone was just playing. So it was not as if I said, poker is such a great game, I want to play it every single day or something. It was just all my friends are playing and they're loving it, and I kind of just humped on the bus or on the train.
When was this? What year?
It was about 2008,
okay.
Possibly 2007 maybe. It's hard. It's somewhere around the time. Let me think. I was probably 15 the first time, so probably 16. Probably like 2007 was the first time I probably sat on a poker table, something around. And then it just became a thing. We played for $10 or something. But my friend had a basement, and we would like go in the basement, and there was no daylight, and it was summertime outside, and we turn on the lights, and then we put $10. And I mean, $10 is a lot when you're 15 or 16, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And you really care, and then it's just adrenaline. No one knows what they're doing anyways, and everyone thinks they're doing something great, and it's just a big, you know, just a big chips moving back and forth. And that was fun. There was something challenging about it, knowing, and this is why poker is so fun to everyone. You can make the right decisions, whether you know it or not, but in that moment you can make the right decision, you know? And so that's why everyone feels that they're playing great, because they have those moments over and over again.
Yep.
In EV, we know an EV could have been a terrible decision, but it was right. Full pocket kings pre-flop, you know, and you have ace king, you know? Yeah. I mean, we've seen those things happening, right? And they were obviously completely wrong, but if you have aces, they think they're the best, and it reinforces their bad decision making, and that was happening all the time in the basement, you know? And so when I got introduced into it, I remember pretty clearly we started playing 2 cents online. And I was like scared. I remember my friend was still joking to this day about this. He like took over my account. I had to go into the bathroom or something. He was sitting next to me, and then he bluffed for 50 cents. I'm like, why are you bluffing for so much? and
for so much?
And for like 56 cents or something. It was a ridiculously small amount. And later on, when I was like playing high stakes, he kept just bringing it up. Do you like remember that moment where I couldn't bluff 56 cents, and now you're putting in 40,000 and you're telling me, oh, it's all good, you know? And
that's great.
And so that's how we started playing. And there was one specific friend who ended up making good money with poker too. He probably, you know, made slightly under $1 million or something. He was very smart. He's now today an engineer. He works for like in Germany for some kind of like big engineering, like for a train company. And he started doing it. He started studying poker, you know, looking at what do you actually play pre-flop, you know? How do you continue post-flop? Like what is the strategy behind some of the hands you're holding, you know? How can you like actually become a better player? Pretty quickly had a $40,000 bankroll. I'm like, damn, I'm 17. I kind of want to have $40,000 too. So what did you do? He's like, well, go on this side, go on that side. And I took off, you know, pretty quickly. I was a member of Card Runners. Do you guys remember Card Runners?
Of course, yeah. I think that was I think that was like the flagship site. You know, Cole South was the person that started that site. He wrote the book Let There Be Range, which totally transformed the landscape of poker.
The Bible of poker, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so you kind of took to the material that was available at that time and just kind of went all in on your own and kind of climbed the ranks more or less by yourself.
Yes, it was pretty much solo till I reached 3.6 and 5.10. And that was the first time I took coaching. That was around the first time I took coaching, and it was from Nut Dog. Do you guys remember him on Card Runners? He was very famous. He was playing 5.10. He was just crushing it, 8 BB100 or something over a large sample. He was very lazy, and he just did coaching because it was the easier way for him to because if someone he has a coaching session set up, it was $400 an hour. That's how he knew he shows up on time and he kind of does the coaching and so on and so forth, and then just leaves. You know, even though some of the things he was doing was very funky. I remember in one coaching session, his pizza was delivered. And so he's like, do you mind if I grab a pizza? I'm like, no problem. He goes off 10 minutes later and he doesn't add those 10 minutes to the coaching session. That's like, you know, $400 an hour session. It's not my damn problem that he has a pizza guy, you know, in the middle of it. That's his problem, is get cold, you know, or whatever it is. Yeah. And so it was like funky things like this, but that was the first coach I had. And then I played 3-6, 5-10, got slightly better. Then there was a friend from Germany that I met also on the poker tables that then coached me. His name was Insider on Full Tilt and Poker Stars. We did quite a good amount of six-mix coaching. That was really helpful. And then my friend Frederick, who then I was introduced to, and from Frederick, I paid him a couple hours of coaching, and then to Jungleman, and then Jungleman, we just hung out, you know, so it was like very natural. And so, yeah, so that was around the time. And it probably took me from playing, you know, I want to say I played 25, 50 cents, 50 cents a dollar only for a couple months, but then I was stuck on 1-2 for about a year. Or 8 months or something. I was break even for like 8 months. And then I don't know what happened exactly, what I understood about poker, but then the graph just went exponential pretty quick. It was 1-2, 2-4, and just kept winning, you know, within, and then I think a year later I was like already winning player on 5-10 over like 100,000 hand sample size.
Wow, so what I love about this story is that a lot of people can actually relate to that in terms of $10 tournaments in the basement, bluffing for 56 cents and feeling like that adrenaline, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're bombing off my account, you know? Yeah. But then you progress it into being someone that's a staple and one of the best in the world. That's the part where it's just like mind-blowing. And then the fact that, you know, the 4 of your first 5 Hendon Mob entries are first place or second place and against the best players in the world. Did you feel like your cash game skills were going to translate to tournaments so easy that you could just hop in these things and crush it?
I thought so. In retrospect, I think I was wrong, you know, because short stack has a lot to it that you just don't know. And then you have to imagine that when you go later into a tournament and essentially the prize money becomes large and the blinds are pretty high, you know what I mean, compared, like, you're playing very high stakes if you translate to cash money. And so if you make 1 or 2 big blind minus EV decisions, that translates into a lot of money pretty quick. So how you play at the end phase of the tournament, is probably more important than how you play at the beginning. So, and at the beginning, I probably had, to some degree, edges on like a good part on the field, because, you know, we were just deep. And at the time when I transitioned from cash games into tournaments, I think tournament players were really just not that great. They became great pretty quick. I mean, I have to say they caught up pretty quickly, you know, when they realized there was a time where tournament players only played tournaments between themselves, you know. They played a little bit of online tournaments and then played live tournaments, but the cash game players never really mixed in. And then there was a phase when I started entering it where a lot of cash game players started coming in. And once they realized that the cash game players had a significant edge that were coming from online, you know, or in some aspects, you know, not in all aspects, you know, by any means, they start improving pretty quick, because, you know, by the end of the day, they're still all smart people, you know, and they already good poker players. It doesn't take that much to fix some of your big leaks, you know, if you prepare well enough. And so, yeah, so I felt like I had an edge in the beginning, but then not so much later on.
That first tournament that you peeled off that big amount in Monte Carlo, yes. Did you feel like your life changed after that? Like there's a before that and then there's an after that?
Yeah, my life financially did not change. That was very clear. But it changed drastically my lifestyle, because I was very convinced I'm only going to Monte Carlo because my friend Sorel invited me to, and said, just hang out in my room, you know, you don't even have to play a tournament, just come over, play cash games and hang out in a nice hotel and meet like some poker people. And I was very introverted. I wouldn't introduce myself to anyone, you know, and so I figured, yeah, I guess, because Sorel was fun. I mean, I had a good time with him, and I just broke up in my 3-year relationship, so it was a good time to get away, to do something different. So I left to Monte Carlo. I think I played the main event, the 25K, busted immediately. I hated live tournaments. I felt it's just weird when you play so many hands online and you kind of feel it's your home, to go into something where it becomes very slow and people stare at you. I remember my first tournament, first table ever. Literally my first tournament, first table ever. Mike
McDonald.
Yes, He like stared at me, and I'm like, it's so ridiculous, you know. But by the way, it probably gives him like good information, you know. Don't get me wrong, but I just didn't feel it, you know. And so I didn't want to come back, and the 100K I didn't even want to play. But then the field was looking really good, and then people were offering me to stake me for it, you know. Were like saying, let me buy a percentage, I give you a markup. And I was like, people pay markup? What do you mean? So if you take 20% of my tournament action, you're actually paying me juice, so I get like a few thousand on top, and yeah. And I was like, that's great. You know, if I would play, I would have sold it for face value, you know, at the time I didn't know that you can charge markup. So I charged the markup. Only because of that I played, by the way, because I figured I already make like 4, 5, 6, 7 grand or something, but just entering into it, I must be winning. You know? Yeah. So I was like, that's fantastic. And then when you win a tournament like that, and you have multiple people attached that you pay out, everyone is so happy, you know, and you get in touch with them immediately, you go afterwards, you drink, you know, you have a good time together. And that's how I met all the German crew immediately. It was like Phil, Igor, Fabi, Toby, Nick, and I really love these guys. And up till today, I think these are like some of the best people I've ever met in my life. Very ethical. They're always doing the right decisions, even if no one's looking, you know. I trust them 100% with the money and my, you know, like my life and my secrets, you know, if I would have any, to be honest. But even like small things that you might don't share with everyone, you know, like some problems in a relationship of some kind, right? Those guys are just fantastic people.
That's one thing that's been really, it's so nice to hear that, because poker has had some black eyes over the years. There's a lot of attention, and, you know, people can remember a lot of the bad things and the bad people that have been around poker. So it's nice because a lot of times people don't really know who the good ones are. You know, we just see people on TV and we assume they're the good ones. But that's why it's nice to hear from you, you know, like, oh no, these guys are actually the good guys. And I'll definitely, I've always really, I haven't known a lot of them very well, but I've followed a lot of them because of their success and, you know, watching them play. And they do have this like center and this peace and this calm around them. And I think it was Igor, maybe there was the $1 million buy-in in the UK maybe like a year or two ago, and I think he bubbled. Or maybe he either bubbled or somewhere around that. And I just remember looking at him, and he like got his money in the way he was supposed to, and I'm pretty sure he bubbled like the $1 million. And he's just like, well, all right. It was just such class, and like shook everyone's hand. I was like, you know, being a poker player, I kind of know what's, at least I assume, what's kind of happening on the inside, and I've never seen a chink in that guy's armor. It's just so nice to see.
He has a great attitude, yeah. I'd say Igor is probably the one person I know that played tournaments that ran by far under EV. He's a fantastic tournament player. You know, you cannot have any reads on Igor. He gets reads on people. He's very good in short stack and ICM situations. I mean, he used to be at some point like basically the go-to guy for all kind of ICM spots if someone asked him to. You know, he was good and deep. He had like some flaws, you know, but they were minor at the time compared to the rest of the field. And yeah, he basically hasn't cashed in any significant tournament for a long damn time. I mean, it's really, yeah, I feel bad for him.
There was probably a 3-year time frame, 2 to 3 year time frame, where you were a staple on the high roller tournament scene, and you kind of just stopped playing. I was just curious what the catalyst for that was.
It was the first year I was winning. I mean, you've seen it, first place, second, you know? I mean, that's pretty enticing to continue. But then the next year, no cash. And in fact, I had the first time in my life a losing year, you know, since I think I was a winning player. And that was a good feedback for me, you know, because in some aspects, losing in a tournament year is not that significant, but I also knew internally, I just met Gabby, my wife, you know, and I was so in love with her, and I spent so much more time with her and off the tables, and there were multiple things happening at the same time. 1, I met my wife. 2, I met the German crew. It was great fun, you know. I was from being alone in my home all the time and playing poker to having fantastic people I was relating to, you know, like in my hometown where I lived, just to go a little bit back, I felt like I was an alien. I felt I was different than other people, and it was not, people did not necessarily enjoy that. You know, the conversations were different. What I wanted to talk about and them, you know, it was 2 different worlds. And I always felt, man, I can't be with people. Like, I have a problem. I do not know how to be with people. And when I met the German crew, I realized, no. It's just, I haven't met the right people, you know, for myself. And so when I met them, it felt like home. When I met Gabby, it even felt more like home on a loving relationship base, right? And then at that time, I basically became sort of like in the spotlight of people. Before that, online, no one knew who I was. I was just playing under LTFC. But then when I started entering the tournament scene, people like knew who I was. They complimented me on being a great player and something. And there were so many things happened that I started almost like something changed inside of me where I was not working as hard anymore. I kind of like felt I'm on top of the world in some ways. Not really on top of the world, but I'm in a very good position. I now have to capture the value, but that mindset really took me a step back. And I didn't acknowledge that till I started losing. You know, when I started losing, I was like, wait a minute, something's going on. And by the time I realized that other people that have been learning for a year and a half, and I've been not learning at all, the distance became quite large. And then, and that was very frustrating because you see someone you were certainly beating a year and a half ago, and now he's certainly beating you. And you know, to switch the positions again, it's 1 year, 1.5 years of very hard, dedicated work. And I just didn't feel it anymore, you know, as much. And so I kind of departed from the live poker scene.
I actually want to speak into relationships. It sounds like what I'm hearing you say is that there was a big shift inside of you where you realized that relationships were something that you wanted to have a primary focus in your life with Gabby and your new German friends. Do you feel like it's possible to maintain and be one of the best in the world and what it takes to be one of the best in the world in, say, 2017 when you made this decision while focusing on relationships, or did you have to pick one or the other?
I think that if you're very talented and then you're very focused on learning the right things in the right way, you can certainly maintain it, but it's still very hard because, you know, being a really good poker player and being a very good, and let's phrase it differently, being an enjoyable human to be around for other people, it's not necessarily combined, you know? There's some people that have a talent for it, you know, but I think for most people, what it requires for you to be a really good poker player is not the same that it requires for you to be like enjoyable around in social settings. You know, and Gabby's, she's no logic, all emotions, you know? So being around her while playing intensity poker, it was not, we had our struggles, you know. She was so in love with me, she kind of accepted it, but it was hard for her. I mean, in retrospect, I think if I would have stayed that way forever, we would have not been together today, which would have been a shame.
Yeah, so what I'm gathering is that once you made the decision that you wanted to focus on relationships, and poker fell by to the wayside a little bit, and you realized that maybe you weren't quite winning like you wanted to be winning, was there a moment where you're like, I need to rededicate to this, or did you start thinking about pursuing other business opportunities outside of poker? Like, how did you navigate that?
So those things are not like, they're not obvious at the time when they're happening, you know. They're sort of, in retrospect, you think, oh yeah, that's what was going on. So at the time when it was going on, I wasn't really sure what was going on. You know, I was still like exploring it, but not necessarily even consciously. There was like some part that just kind of like wanted to step back a little bit from poker just to have some distance. Another part of me, at the time, remember, there's still good games, you know, so it was not like, even though I stopped playing the tournaments and I stopped playing maybe the extremely high cash games on Stars, there were poker apps popping up, you know. There was Poker Master, and then there were some other sites in Spain and Italy or something, so you could still make a pretty good living, you know, playing at the time if you do it right. So what I was focusing on was getting into better games, you know, going a little bit back to basics. You know how they say one of the most important skills in poker is game selection?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's still true.
Yeah.
You know, even if today, like, you have to, and by game selection, it's not just about playing for recreational players, but knowing where you are compared to the rest of the field and putting your money in where you're like, you're in a good position, and not putting your money in when you're in a bad position. And that has pros and cons, because if you never gamble minus EV, people don't like you, you know?
Yeah.
So that's something I learned later on too. So basically I was kind of gradually just changing the games I was playing, but not really working on my game too much. I was kind of keeping up and using Pio and, you know, some stuff, but it was feeling harder and harder by every year, you know, maybe every month even, or every couple months. It was just not the same passion anymore. I didn't have the same drive to know how to play 5-3 suited if I have a gut shot versus, you know, backdoor draws, or what kind of range to see bet, which ones to check, you know, which ones to trap later on, and so on. it just became almost, I don't know, pointless, you know, just to continue figuring out what cards, how to play. There was something that I just lost the interest in it, you know. And I think a lot of people in other areas, in sports or in business, you know, there's this great book by David Data, A Way of a Superior Man. He describes in that he believes that there's a cycle for men, that every 7, 8, 9, 10 years or something, you're essentially feeling like you have to drop what you're doing and doing something new. It's just a different life phase. It's a different, you know, you have a different mindset, like things change. And so what you do has to change too. It cannot be the same way, otherwise you have not developed really. Do you know what I mean? Unless that what you do also develop at the same time and you might stay in the same direction, but it's quite unlikely. And, you know, what a young man does is not the same what a 30 and 40-year-old man does.
That's been one of my fears, honestly, is just, like, I've been around poker long enough, almost 20 years, and I've seen people that they don't change, you know, they don't grow, and I see them in the same stakes playing for so long, and you know, and a lot of these are like mid-stakes games where I know it's really hard to make a living, and I never wanted to be that person that was like stuck to this thing. And you know, I've really been a lot of what we're doing here and talking about doing other things. And
but at the same token, it's really difficult to give up something that provides so well for your family.
Very difficult.
So I'm sure there was that struggle as well.
That's the reason I continued, you know, because if you still make 20, 30 grand a month, or whatever the number is, and you think, well, if I don't do this, I'm certainly not going to find something that's going to replace it. You know, it's a hard decision to step away, especially if you have no idea what you're going to do next. I think there's two different ways, to be honest, to like exit poker. One is you just basically don't make enough money anymore, and it's too frustrating. So you step out, you're forced to step away. Or two is you really just can't stand playing poker anymore. You know, you just hate it so much, or you just cannot show up at the poker table anymore. You just don't want to see the cards. So you just like suffer basically by doing what you're doing, that you need to step away in order to like become, you know, find some peace. And I've seen that with my friend Nick Heinecker, who just couldn't stand it any longer. You know, he couldn't stand the poker environment, the hustling, you know, that people were like shooting, you know, all kinds of angles. There was always a deal making. There was always like someone who promised something, doesn't deliver, and so on. And he was financially so well off that he said, I just can't do this any longer. I don't want this for my life anymore. You know, I just can't take anymore. And then what he did is he didn't play a single hand of poker at all anymore.
Wow, just cold turkey.
Because he knew that if he starts doing it again, he kind of continues, and you know, he tried to quit a couple times in between. And he didn't even want to talk about poker anymore. He's like, guys, I just don't want to talk about it. You know, don't tell me anything about cards. That's one way. The other way is what was happening with me. My income goes down, 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 and at some point I'm like, screw this. You know, like it's very hard to work on something where you know that the future is looking, you know, grim. When I started playing poker, the future was bright. You can play 501k, you know, against fish. And by the time I ended, it's like there's barely a 25-50 game that's running. That's not OTB Red Baron, Linus Love, and you know, number 3, 4, and 5. It's like, you can't do anything. You have to like switch to either private games or, you know, find some other system, or you know, just quit.
Which you were looking for private games and playing on apps that were player pools that were regulated by the owner of the club or whatever. Yeah. And you did that for a while. Did you have trouble with the politics of that, staying in games and things like that?
Yeah. Well, the games, it was not so much the politics of like staying in the games, because mainly I gave the affiliates or someone a big piece, you know, and then I got in the game and they were happy because I was a moneymaker for them. It was more that I find that those private games just don't last very long. They die out pretty quick because, you know, a few of the big recreational players lose their money, you know, the others, even the recreational players, see that someone that was worse than them stopped playing. They don't feel like that they're better. It's the thing on poker, everyone wants to see someone who's worse than them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So the one whale at the table is very important because it keeps all the other whales going. If that one whale disappears and number 2 disappears, then the other ones sort of step away too, you know, naturally. So that was just happening very quickly in the games. Plus, you know, then the club owners, you know how poorly those apps were run at the time. They run up these big outstanding balances and people don't pay and they just close down pretty quick. So those games always lasted for 4 weeks and then they're over. 4 weeks and they're over, you know. So I played sporadically, intensely, and then I didn't do anything with poker.
Interesting. That's actually something that I do know about you, is your obsession when you are playing.
Yeah.
So like if you are in a game, you're the kind of person that just doesn't leave the computer for multiple days in a row.
Yeah, I pee in a bottle and do things like this.
It's crazy. I mean, I imagine that inside of you comes from just this insatiable need to want to support your family and know that if you don't do this right now, the opportunity could be gone.
Yes, that's what it feels like to me. I kind of have a feeling that if I turn it down, I might not get it back. You know, so I have to like grab on and hold on to it. You know, and I've been in poker around long enough, knowing that those opportunities are not coming along, and they're getting like more and more rare. You know, so I probably did the right time, like the right thing to grab on. But there's also like something, if you overdo it, your game gets worse.
So we just had someone interrupt the video cast because they left something on your boat, which I feel like is the perfect segue to talk about why we're even sitting on this boat. You are a part owner of this boat. It's a massive boat. How long is this boat?
76 feet.
76 feet.
We're on the second story.
Yeah, we're on the second floor. Somebody that came just to interrupt the video cast had left something here because you're in the process of setting this up as a business. So is this is your first foray into like a business post poker?
Yes. Okay. My first really serious one.
And you're still playing a little bit of poker on every once in a while, right?
If a good game pops up, yeah, I'll still jump in. Okay. But it has to be really good by now, because you know it's whatever deviates my focus from this has to be worth it almost, you know, because every day you don't show up. We have currently so much going on the boat. We have 3 naval architects working for us, a marine electrician, a plumber. We have a couple of employees. We have a captain, mechanic, you know, and this all has to be very well organized, and you're responsible that the whole thing continues moving in the right direction. And so if I slack 1 or 2 or 3 days, I'm not available, or I haven't thought something through, then that will show up for everyone else's work. And so it just pulls down the project as an entirety, you know, and so it's costly. So you have to make sure that this will always stay on track, unless the game is really good and I can allow myself to do that.
When you were playing poker, it was a very solitary thing in terms of your relationship with Gabby. You know, you were locked away in a room. Yes. You were in a casino, you know, while she was doing whatever in whatever country that you happen to be in. So I imagine that would be pretty isolating for her. But this boat is vastly different. You know, you guys are working on things together.
Gabby is a very social person. She loves being with people. Her entire life, all she wants to do is talk to people, you know.
She's great at it.
So being in a poker world was very strange, because everyone's so logical and she's so emotional, you know. So she felt like an alien in the poker world at times, you know. People loved her for her goodness of her heart and appreciated her, but the conversations that we had were very different than what she would have enjoyed. So transitioning now to like getting the boat, it's exactly her thing. She loves being on it. She loves hosting people, talking to them, getting to know them, seeing friends, you know, being wild for a little bit too, you know, like having a drink with the people too. She loves all of that kind of stuff. And I was wondering when I started the business, because I thought it's just a good business. I know it's going to be making money for me. So that was my number one reason to start it. And for number two is I figured I'm going to live in San Diego probably for the rest of my life. It's time for me to get to know some people. I've been living here for 3 years and I know 2 handfuls, you know. I was like, if I continue doing like this, by the time I turn 50, I'm going to know 24 people in San Diego, you know. So I felt that having such an event space where people keep coming and going and keep revisiting them, I'm going to expose myself to a lot of people, and they're all local. And that might lead to something else. I figured that's a good thing. It might lead to a poker game, you know, to be honest. So there were like multiple aspects like this. But I was afraid of, what if this is just not for me? You know, what if it's not for me to like be around people all the time and have them call me? My phone is blowing up. I mean, it's constantly text messages, you know, from all kinds of people. And guess what? You know, after I adjusted so quickly to it. It's incredible almost to me. I look back and this might be the most proud moment of my life, is how I transitioned from being isolated and introverted to like being more on an extrovert side and being with so many people and being able to communicate with everyone on a very nice, in a very efficient, kind, good-hearted way. Because, you know, one thing is to just do business, but also care about those people, you know, make them feel valued for the work they do and so on and so forth, and continue their work together. One of the things is at the poker table, you're always alone. You play for yourself, maybe you have an investor, but they're like sitting in some room, right? But when you run a business, everyone in that business counts on everyone else to do work, and so you really have to work together. It's really teamwork, you know, and that's something that I feel like I figured out pretty quick, you know, and I enjoy working with those guys, and they really enjoy working with me. That's, you know, as far as I can see.
Yeah, it's crazy. What I'm also hearing is that you're very passionate about things that push you in a relationship sense.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the boat is something that's bringing you out of your introvert shell and opening up some things and creating some things that you're like, love it, like you're passionate about it. You see it.
It's new, you know, it's fresh. It's almost a different aspect of life. You kind of wake up and you're like, I'm in a different place. You know what I mean? I feel different about people. They feel different about me. I communicate differently. You know, I understood something that I have not understood before. That you could never understand, you know, construction unless you construct something. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, how to like do dimensions and put things together and why they matter and why one thing is better than the other and so on. And with people, negotiate, get over problems, you know, like misunderstandings, you know, all kinds of things all the time. I mean, literally, it doesn't stop. And it's fun because I feel every single time I get a little bit less nervous, a little bit more confident, a little bit more knowledgeable, you know, come from a place where I feel I'm making constantly just better and better decisions, and it's very rewarding. It's almost like starting to play poker and you see your graph going up exponentially. I feel like that kind of is happening for me in life, you know?
Well, you got a son too now, you know, you have, you know, your marriage, and, you know, you and Gabby have been together for what, it's about 8 years now,
8
right?
years, yeah.
Now you have a son, and
intense 8 years.
You guys are really planted down here in San Diego, which is another reason why I think it makes a lot of sense for you to set up shop here with a business. And honestly, like, if you're going to choose a business, like, it's just such a sweet thing to be on the water, to be on a boat. I mean, it's something in all of us human beings that we just like being around the ocean, being on water. It's just so relaxing. So it's kind of like if you know, marry a chef or something, you know, you get like all the perks of the day, you know, of those things. Yeah.
It is. It's really crazy how long we've been in Southern California, and there's been times where we'll go weeks, if not months, without going to the water.
Yeah.
And like, now that you're actually like quote unquote working on the water, you have no excuse. Like, you're here all the time.
Yeah, I almost can't believe sometimes how good of a working space this is. It's one of those things people imagine to do in their lives, you know, but never do. And I didn't even imagine to be that good. You know, dealing like with large drunk crowds is not fun. I mean, I'll tell you that much, you know. Dealing with sober crowds that, you know, that just come on the boat, that's fun. And we had this day, the other day I was with my captain, we were like waiting for a group of people, and they were late about an hour. And so I was sitting in the captain chair, he was kind of like leaning back, you know, like in one of those sofas here, and just on a pillow, and we were like talking for about an hour about his life and, you know, just sharing things, you know, about even situations on the boat and whatnot. And I realized, you know, I'm being paid for this. Like right now I'm underwater, just hanging out with my captain, who's a great guy. You know, we're just talking about our lives and someone's paying us for it. I was like, how much? It's pretty damn good, especially when you get older. You know, it's one of those things when you don't have the same energy anymore when you're 20. It's pretty awesome, and it's beautiful. And you don't get to see this. You don't get to have the views. Like the views from the water are really exclusively to be from the water. You only get it there, unless you really go all the way to the tip of the island somewhere and you go on shore and you kind of see it. But there's also something moving in spaces, you know what I mean? One is to have like a static view, the other one is changing the entire time, so it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I gotta say, there is something about a boat, and it's one of the reasons why my birthday's coming up, and we're gonna have my birthday party on your boat. And for a couple of reasons, I can't imagine like a better birthday party. Number one is we're on a boat, we're on the water, it's huge. I can play music, I can DJ, do the things that I love to do. But number two is I get to support one of my friends' businesses, you know, and like, I think a lot of times when, you know, you have someone who's doing something new and it's a friend's business, or like, you know, we're starting this podcast, this video cast, and when I see a friend watch it and comment on it, that's like so exciting for me. I'm like, wow, a good friend of mine is supporting my business. And so often people are like, can I get a free, you know, whatever, can I get a free drink at the bar because you own the bar or whatever? Yeah. I see it over and over, but what really is like, I want to pay double, you know, like can I support it even more because I want to see you succeed in it. I think it's an important lesson if you have friends that are doing things in the entrepreneurial space or starting a business, support them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly the same way. I often thought, why do people want to have a discount if they know me, you know? It's like we're currently losing money. I would always offer to pay the full price because for the exact same reason, you know, it's hard to start something. We don't even know if everything that we're doing right now currently is going to work out. There's all kinds of things with the license that are still going on that I sort of like have a big question mark behind them. So currently we're just losing money, you know, like month by month. So if you can support someone, it's always, and by the way, you're enjoying it. It's you're receiving a service or a product that adds value to your life, to your friendships, you know. It's not as if you're just buying something and you're like gifting them the money or something. You're actually receiving something good in the end.
Of course, yeah. And if something goes wrong, like I want to be the first one to tell you, hey, I noticed that there's this process in your business that I think could be improved. Like I want to be the person to tell you that, not some random Yelp reviewer or somebody that's upset and demanding money back, you know. So that's another perk of, because I feel like I have a hand in your success, you know, and any friend wants that.
And the other thing is, since we own a boat, we're seeing friends a lot more. You know?
Definitely. I mean, how many times have we've been living in the same town, and I feel like because we're both so introverted, if it wasn't for Gabby, if it wasn't for Olga being great friends, I might never see you. And that's a shame because when I am with you, it's some of the most fun times that I have. And also I just value the way that you're so thoughtful in your responses. I feel like I gain some bit of knowledge every time we talk. Obviously, now that we're on video, some other people are going to get some knowledge, which is amazing too.
Yeah. There's a thing too with friendships, I find, you know, you have to have sort of a purpose to be together in friends. It's, so many friendships are about just go for dinner or grab a coffee. And then the purpose in that moment is you do want to kind of meet, but really the purpose is eating, right? You kind of fill up your tummy and you kind of think you want to be social, but then it's hard. So what have you been doing the last 8 months, 5 months or something? It doesn't really connect you. But when you have experiences outside of that, like really together, where you have like a group event or a birthday party, or you take out the boat just for the views or something, you sit down, you kind of just relax. It really allows you to, it doesn't have to be all the time talking. Like everyone, like on the boat, everyone sort of enjoys themselves by themselves as well as with the group together, and then it interacts, you know, almost like a spider, like a matrix, you know. It's really interesting to watch the dynamics like in that kind of environment. And so I feel a lot of the people that we haven't seen in a long time, but haven't been really keeping in touch with since we own it, all of a sudden like relationships are flourishing, you know, in a good way. I mean, obviously some are superficial, but some have certainly deepened, you know, and with you it's one of them.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's really great that you went from an industry and something that you were doing in business where you were isolated to now something that's, you know, very social and out there. And I see for you, you know, if you move on from this business or you transform the business, from what I'm hearing you say, I think that doing something that's all about relationships and doing something that's all about forcing you into your extroverted self is going to be a great path for you.
It was good for me. Like I don't think it's good for everyone per se, you know. It's it really depends what your life looks like, you know. It depends on your relationships, because so much of what I want to do has to flow into that my relationships in my family become better and not worse. It's very important because I see my wife every single day and my kid. And so what really changed from poker to now, like what I'm doing now, is I think there's some wisdom inside of me that I've gained over the time that what I do really has to enhance my life. It cannot just be about the financial decisions. I mean, I would be happily stepping off the boat immediately if it doesn't help me. You know, if it does harm my relationship, I'm off that thing quicker than you can think. You know, I just sell it immediately. If there was to be a big problem of girls on the boat or something and jealousy, and you know, and I would like sort of have problems maintaining my relationship or something because of it. By the way, it's completely the opposite. You know, I would immediately sell it, you know, and get out of it, or you know, let someone else run it. You know, preferably, obviously, if it's a good business, you don't really sell it. You let someone else run it, and you kind of manage it from the sidelines. But yeah, so it has to like become, your life has to become better. You know, for me, relationships are just a big part of it. Yeah. You know, to myself and to Gabby, because one of the things I do differently too now compared to poker, by the way, now in the business world, I take more time for my own well-being. Like I told you guys, I train now, right? And I really make it a priority to sleep well and to train, because I know it really changes who I am. It changes my decision making. I kind of respect it more. In poker, you know, the weird thing is this: every second something's going on. Every second you can make money, you know? In the real business world, it's not exactly like that. You know, you have moments and you kind of build towards it, you know, towards a customer base or your market to get into a situation or something, but you can't do it right now, you know? Can't make a grand right this minute, but you can always do in poker.
You can't take the boat out at 2 a.m, for example. I love.
And so just to finish the thought, so what it means that sometimes what's like really hard to do in poker is to realize it's actually good to quit right now and take some time off to really get back into a better state of mind to make better decisions, because that's better for the long run. I think in a setting like this, it's way easier because you just always think about the long run, because essentially there's nothing short term like today, you know, that if there's no booking, there's nothing for me to like do on it besides thinking about what is going to like next 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, months going to look like. And so it kind of happens to be automatically that. By the way, and there's other businesses when you run a coffee shop, it might not be the same, because there's a customer coming at 5 a.m, wants a coffee, you know, so you're like ding, ding, ding. And it's easy in those types of businesses to get lost, you know, in the little transactions that are happening all the time, and not look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. I feel like poker does kind of create an environment that makes it hard to think about coming into a business like this, where like it creates this mindset of like I could make money at any time. You know, the game is always there essentially when you're talking about playing online, at least right now. And you know, it can be a distraction, you know, like for me, and I think a lot of people that are looking to get out of poker or trying to do something else, like your friend knows why he doesn't play, because he knows that like if he starts to play, like, you know, he's going to continue to do that. And I think taking like a full pivot and being like, I'm going to do something different, and it's going to look very different as far as how the money comes in. That's a hard thing to get used to when you know, go from thinking about like you're making essentially a certain hourly rate to now like maybe I'm not making money for 6 months, and then when I am
Longer.
Yeah, or whatever it is, and then maybe even, you know, it's going to take, you know, maybe it is not even going to work out. So it's like all these questions they can be really tough.
Yes, it's certainly you exchange instant gratifications for long-term goals.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily like natural to do, you know, because I remember when I first like started like doing calls or like looking for boats, I want to find one today. I want to figure out things today, and then it's very frustrating when you call people or, you know, organizations, companies, and you request information, and it takes them 9 days to get back to you. You know,
what
you're
are
like,
you even doing?
It's like, oh, and then like it's a short email and you didn't really get the answer, and then you have to refine how do you ask the question, who do you ask it to, how do you get to the right person that you really want to speak to who can give it to you right away, you know, and you start. This is again back getting to the social aspect, you know, of it. It's very, very, very interesting how humans work. Humans, they work differently in a small boutique shop than they do in large corporations, than they do, you know, like they have different responsibilities, and so you have to talk to them all differently. It's a very fascinating game to really, just for that reason, to go into business work, because I feel you really learn something about the human race that you just don't do when you play a card game isolated for 10 years, because especially every year it gets harder to learn something new, because you already established a way of how you do things. It's way harder to like do something differently, has worked for a long time, and to like unlearn and relearn. Well, it's way easier to learn something new, you know, and it's more exciting too. And to be honest, probably in the long term, it's even better, because you don't want to be an insect, you know, just cranking away your entire life doing the same thing. I heard once this amazing analogy. Is almost like when you're young, you know, you might like want to, you know, get educated. Then when you're a young adult, you might have like go to war, and then when you're like have been a couple of years in war, you might like take a leading position in it or something. Then you come back, you might want to become active in politics, and when you get really old, you want to become the wise person who's teaching the people like all of the stuff that he's learned. You don't want to be the guy who's just in a coal mine just cranking away coal for 45 years and retire. You know, it's like I feel like there's so much to life to it that has a diversity, that has something interesting about this, and naturally, as I'm growing older, I feel that's something I do want to do anyways. Like I feel I want to transition, you know, and it's always tricky when you're making great money with like something you don't even love anymore, because you feel you're stuck into it in this, because you know it just works, right? So that's what, when we go back to a conversation, you have two ways of going out. Either the game forces you, whatever game you're playing, or you just can't do it any longer because your heart is not there anymore and you have to stop. And I think it's very healthy to be in either or situation. So whoever's out there listening right now thinking they're like stuck in a situation, it might not be bad. You might look back into it in a couple of years and say, that was a good moment that really led me to something better, And without it, maybe I would have been still cranking away in whatever game I was playing.
The pandemic really did that for me with live poker. I mean, the casinos closed, so basically it was like I had to really take a look at that. And one thing you said also that really kind of, I've always thought about poker in my life because I'm approaching 20 years now. I never wanted poker to be my life story.
I don't want to be 80 sitting at the poker table. I want to have a bunch of kids around me, and I want to have like all kinds of stories to tell, not just like which great hand I bluffed or something, or what.
I just didn't want it to be. I was very happy with it being a very beautiful chapter, a very beautiful section in the book, and I could just see I was on a path where I could run the risk of being the guy in the coal mine, as you say.
Yeah, I mean the environment naturally changes. If you think about like the year has multiple seasons, and over years temperatures and conditions are changing all the time, all across the globe. Essentially you have to adjust all the time to your new environments. It's something we've done for the longest time. We've been exploring. We said, hey, this is no good anymore. Let's go further up north. Let's see what's going on there. Maybe there's more food. Maybe there's more resources. We've been always like, we're naturally as humans, we're kind of explorers. We have been expanding. I mean, look at the world where it is today. It's pretty much a proof. It's not just something I say. It's very clear. That's what we've been doing. We're about to go to space. We keep like exploring further and further our environment, and what we can do. And I'm not saying it's also for everyone. I mean, I really have to say there's some people I know, certainly they have this extreme necessity for security. They do the one thing, they do it really well, they get a paycheck to paycheck, they can't leave it, and they would be extremely stressed to leave it. And even if they would leave it, they would look for something new that would be still in the same type of work or something, or the same type of structure. And so it's not necessarily something for everyone, but I think that probably a lot of people that listen to a podcast, they can relate to that. Like you guys can certainly, and I know all of my poker guys. I mean, they really all do. All the German crew, they all moved to something completely different, and they're all happy today anyway. So one of the things you need to know is you're probably going to be. Life is probably going to be okay. It can't get that much worse. It can get worse for a few years, but if you're a decent human being, just like a good heart, and you have a little bit of brain, and you have a good, like a relatively good state of mind, you will get something going for yourself, better than the average. So don't be too afraid, to like do something different.
All right, well, we're gonna call that a show. Thank you, Max Altergott, the one, the only high stakes poker player turned professional businessman and entrepreneur. We're gonna connect with the audience via Clubhouse. I'm gonna get Max signed up for Clubhouse so that anyone has any questions post-show, they can talk to Max, Andrew, and I. We love doing this weekly. And like I said, Max, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Fun.
I look forward to the big weekend on the boat.
Oh yeah, my birthday's coming up. Definitely looking forward to that. And looking forward to the lessons from the grind that is the new business venture.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. It was wonderful.
I'ma give it all I got.